Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and in this video we're breaking down Predator Killer of Killers. After Prey, it was clear that the Predator franchise was in safe hands with Dan Trachtenberg as its steward. Fans were not only getting Predator Badlands, but the director also shocked the internet by revealing he'd been working on a secret surprise movie. That was Killer of Killers, which was made concurrently with Predator Badlands. He had a hell of a lot on his plate, but I think both films are some of the strongest in the franchise, with this one especially being a standout. Predator Killer of Killers dropped on Disney Plus and Hulu to rave reviews, and as a big fan of the franchise, I really enjoyed it. 2 thumbs up. Now, we did do a breakdown of this when the movie first dropped, however, I felt it was time to revisit the film. I've seen it a couple of times now and have noticed a lot more, and we also have the extended post-credit scene. You see kids, at the time, they just did the Naru reveal, and we obviously did the breakdown with that as the final scene. And I'll be honest mate, I die a bit inside every time there's a new comment on that video saying like, "What the hell is this mate, you totally missed the last scene. You piece of shit." But what happened is that they actually extended the post-credit scene and announced this updated version at Comic-Con about 3 months after its release. So we are back to include that as well, and this will be our complete breakdown of the movie 2.0. Now, Trachtenberg admitted that he was inspired by Pulp Fiction and that he wanted to make an anthology movie which was set across multiple time periods. Unreal Engine was used to make the film, with Trachtenberg being no stranger to not only this engine, but also video games in general. Throughout our breakdowns, we've talked about the clear nods to Shadow of the Colossus and God of War, but Trachtenberg has worked on video game stuff directly. He made a fantastic Portal film and directed the Warframe opening cutscene. UE was also used during the production of Prey to animate the shots, and Assassin's Creed 3 inspired Naru's chase near the end. If you think the animation looks like Arcane as well, this similarity was intentional. The director was inspired by the League of Legends Netflix show, which is some of the most stunning animation in recent memory. Speaking with Hulu, he also explained that while making movies, he'd seen some of the most gorgeous concept art ever. This production aimed to make it look like the concept art had come to life, and to be a film that looked like none other in the franchise. Now, not only is this an anthology, but what surprised me the most is how there are 3 stories that end up connecting in a final battle. It also adds in a lot more lore with the Predator hierarchy and how they collect fighters for their entertainment. The 3 stories end in a Gladiator competition, which was inspired by the movie Best in Show of all things. For me though, this is like an old Dark Horse comic come to life, but enough of the gushing. There's so much to break down, including lore, franchise connections and more, so yeah. Let's just get into Predator Killer of Killers. Now, the movie opens with the trademark Yautja language. Dan Trachtenberg actually hired someone to make the language real and translate it into English, which we see here. Linguist Britton Watkins was behind the whole thing, and he tried to make it as realistic as possible. He realized that as the Yautja don't have lips, they can't make certain words, and thus he had to get creative. However, they fleshed out the entire dialect and continued this work on Predator Badlands. Helpfully though, the Yautja gets translated into English, and we can see that it's an excerpt from the Yautja Codex. A passage from the Codex also opened Predator Badlands, which said, "Yautja are prey to none, friend to none, and predator to all." Throughout the franchise, we've seen that the Yautja live by a code of honor, and here they're told to seek only the strongest prey, which is important. They don't just kill anyone, and will actively point their weapons away from harming the vulnerable. In Predator 2, the city hunter didn't kill a kid, and he also refused to kill a pregnant woman. What a nice guy! In Predator 1, we also saw how the Yautja usually come down to their prey's level if they deem them worthy. For example, like Dutch had makeshift weapons at the time, which led the jungle hunter to unmask and fight him fairly. Like, as fairly as a 9-foot guy can be. But to be fair, Arnie's massive as well. But yeah, they ignore those that they deem weak, and that's why for most of Prey, the Predator just overlooks Naru. But then she gets the power of girl power, woohoo! Now, an important thing to remember is that the Yautja who capture our 3 heroes are just one of many clans. We have seen differentiations throughout the franchise, and in this movie get lots of different variants. The numbers below the Codex also appear in Badlands, and they represent how this is almost seen like a religious text. In the Bible, we of course have verses and so on, but this shows how the Yautja live by these rules almost like they're a religious sermon, which yeah, to them it is. The movie then cuts to Earth and we start with the first of our stories. That is The Shield, which is set in 841. The ship flying in space is identical to the opening of Predator 1, and it's a nice way to kickstart the hunt story. However, this is no jungle fight, and we see as Vikings on longboats ask for Odin's blessing. Now, the comics have often set stories throughout the centuries, and it's created some really great ones from fights in the Civil War and beyond. Here we meet Ursa and her son Anders and learn the Krivich leader Zoran killed Ursa's father Einar. Well, really he made Ursa kill her father, or he'd kill them both, but we're getting technical there. But yeah, he ruled over the Ladoga in Russia, and since then she's been on a quest for revenge. She's inspired by the legendary poem Beowulf, and the titular hero helps the Danish king by defeating Grendel. Grendel's mother then arrives to seek revenge, and with Ursa being a mother, you can also be like, well, she's a Grendel as well. But yeah, Grendel is referenced several points, and she even calls the Yautja Grendel at one point in the film. Now you do watch this thinking that they're going to play things by the number and have Ursa die, and then Anders will kill the predator. However, Anders also dies in this story, and this leads to Ursa seeking revenge on the predators. Beyond Beowulf, Conan the Barbarian also inspired the revenge story in The Shield and was used as a reference for the Yautja culture. That movie also starred Dutch himself in Arnie. The choice of Vikings here is great though, as they had a warrior culture that aligns with the Yautja. It was seen as a great honour to die in glorious battle, as this would allow you to go to Valhalla. Vikings of course pillaged, raided, and another word that begins with R, but they also saw honour as being one of the most important aspects of life. So, sort of like how using an invisibility cloak is cheating, but the Yautja still do it anyway. It is cheating, mate, it is. The similarities extend beyond that in this opening though, and like the young Yautja in Alien vs Predator, Naru in Prey, and so on and so forth, Anders gets blooded after this attack. Now, of all the three time periods, this is probably the most similar to the Yautja, although Japanese culture, of course, deals heavily with honour. But yeah, they both wear trophies of their kills, with the Vikings having fur, whereas the Warlord at the end has a cape made of xenomorph tails. Dan Trachtenberg has played coy when it comes to that Easter egg though, and it does happen at an interesting time, as the Alien franchise has had a shot in the arm with Alien Romulus and Alien Earth on Disney+. Fede Alvarez, who is behind Alien Romulus, he has expressed interest in making AVP3, but despite being 19 years old at this point, AVP Requiem makes me hope this never happens. Just start afresh, mate, just reboot it. I do think Trachtenberg is also clearly very willing to lean into the Alien connection, as Weyland Yutani of course appeared massively in Badlands. Who knows, we might even see a crossover with Independence Day, as Badlands Trophy Room had a Harvester Skull. But after Independence Day resurgence, I never want to see that franchise again either. Anyway, if you love the franchises, then why not check out our merch store right below the video, where we've got lots of shirts inspired by Alien and Predator. There's a Hunter one, or Isolation one as well, and also lots of things from Alien Earth. Plus big discounts the more you buy, and why would you not want to look great?
Why?
What do you mean why? 'Cause you can't.
Why?
Anyway, back to this. Ursa's clan seem to have been on a long journey of revenge, and she thinks she'll finally face her father's killer tonight. She's a shield maiden, which ties in the name of this chapter, and was a term used to describe a woman who fights with the men. We also see the Algiz rune, which has come to mean protection, just like what a shield's used for. The rune in text and filled with blood, and we see the aftermath of the battle. The Vikings have wiped out their enemies, except for one guy who's been left alive to be questioned. We see the guy's fellow soldiers dead on the floor in a wide shot, and though this might be a reach, I did see a lot of similarities with the guy being strung up on a leafless tree, resembling the world tree from Norse mythology. Was gonna say Ysadril there, but I messed it up, so I tried to drop it out the sentence, and it didn't really work. But yeah, beyond that, this also might be a reach, but it reminds me of Prometheus and God of War 2, especially as both had their torsos damaged. I was also reminded of Mimir from God of War 2018, and he was tortured by being attached to a tree and basically left there forever. That game is of course also tied to Viking mythology, so potentially this is just building off all their legends. Kratos of course also has a red mark across his face, and in our Badlands breakdown we pointed out how Trachtenberg had been clearly influenced by those games too. But video games is how I learned most of my history in general. For example, did you know that Leonardo da Vinci made a flying machine for an assassin? Did you know that? But either way, Ursa questions him, asking where Zoran is, and it turns out he's built a huge fortress overlooking Lake Ladoga. Receiving this information, Ursa tells Anders to kill the man by giving him a merciful death. It's more of an insult though, as the man will not reach Valhalla because of this. The guy also says that he'll haunt Anders if he kills an unarmed man, and in a way, both he and his mother are cursed and they pay for this dishonorable attack. He dies, and she's of course transported to a Predator Gladiator planet, and both are hunted from this moment forward. Due to the Predator's cloak as well, you could even view it as being almost like a spectre, which stalks them through the land because of what they did here. Upon resting, we then hear how Ursa's desperate to reach Zoran before the overwinter. If this sets in, then she'd have to wait a whole season before getting her revenge. However, her rushing ahead just leads to more pain, and in being so desperate to get revenge, Anders dies because of it. Cutting to her as a child, we see she appears a lot like Aloy from Horizon Forbidden West. It's here that her father also marks her face with his blood as she's forced to kill him. This mark is something she later recreates with the war paint, and it's almost like a permanently blooded scar covering her eye. She's heavily fixated on revenge, so being over her eye also feels symbolic as well. You might also notice that once she gets revenge and kills the guy, later in the story the face paint disappears, showing that the mark has been fulfilled. We also learn that the face paint is the mark of their leaders, being passed down from father to son and now father to daughter. The monster of rage and revenge was born inside her in this moment, and this can only be killed by killing Zoran. Now, the tales of the Vikings were also filled with Valkyries as well, who are heavily connected to death. Ursa was described as the Valkyrie of the Northern Sea, and it all ties back to this moment. We then see that the raiding party are being watched, just like Dutch's squad in the first Predator movie. Even like the way we zoom in on the tree, it is just like before we saw the Jungle Hunter's POV. We then see Ursa's crew arriving at Zoran's fortress by the lake, and you might notice that her weapons are two shields, which is something I am almost certain that Trachtenberg lifted from AC Haller.
Why?
What do you mean why? 'Cause you can't.
Why?
Well, he actually hired that game's composer for Prey after playing the game. That is Shara Shashrana, and she also scored Predator Badlands after this. In addition to this, Valhalla also had the option to play as a female protagonist who led a group of Vikings, so there's that too. The action here though is very bloody and brutal, and she fits in right with Dutch, Mike, Naru and Royce. Now those shields are mainly used for defense. We see she goes berserker and uses them as a weapon. This is very similar to God of War as well, where Kratos uses his shield in a similar way. That actually inspired the Predator's shield in Prey, and in both that and this, the bearers use it as a way to behead their opponent. I love how we follow her from behind as well, and it's just such an incredible scene. Finally, she makes it to her goal, sees Zoran, and then is met with a
Who? Star-Lord, man. Legendary outlaw.
The girl got done drapered.
I feel bad for you.
I don't think about you at all.
Like some Thanos, I don't even know who you are, and/or Cyril type shit. Her entire life has led to this whimper though, and he reduces her to simply being a woman. He makes fun of her and rattles off how ashamed her dad would be, but Anders takes him down mid-rant. Now technically, Anders has stolen Ursa's kill here, which is a big no-no in the Yautja Code of Honor. Zoran was also unarmed, and this is why the Predator blasts him first. The alien then strikes and pretty much just fucks the entire team up. I really like how Trachtenberg chooses a fairly low-tech weapon for this Yautja though, and with this being set over a millennia ago, it makes sense that they'd have more primitive tech. So this Yautja doesn't have the trademark wrist device. Instead, he has a concussive blast gauntlet which has replaced his severed hand. It shows the alien's adaptability and how even after being injured, they'll come back with something lethal. You might also notice that the creature also needs to reload it, which again plays into that low-tech motif. We then get a good look at this Yautja who's wearing a helmet similar to the Jungle Hunter, although you can see his mandibles. He's a hulking beast though, and might even be the tallest Yautja to date. He seems a bit similar to the upgrade Predator who was massive in the Predator, or the Berserker Yautja from 2010's Predators. We then get a trademark trophy pull, which is unique as the Yautja uses his concussive blast to rip it out. Ursa then goes into a rage as Anders is targeted, but the lad gets trapped under a beam. Her revenge has led to her clan being wiped out, and her son's killed as the entire building collapses. It's a great moment though that really shows how Trachtenberg's utilised animation, as CGI here in a live action film would cost a fucking shitload. A lot more than our membership, which is only 99 cents a month, and it's an early access to a video every week. You also see the sound waves hit Ursa as she tries to shield herself, but doesn't work well and they just simply melt away. This is her quote-unquote waterfall moment though. It's a trope in the franchise which calls back to Dutch escaping into the river while running from the Jungle Hunter. In these films, it's when the character sinks to their lowest point, pun not intended, but they come back stronger. But yeah, we've saw this in Predators, Prey, and Deck also went over a waterfall when escaping from the clutches of whaling Yutani. She then goes to swim to the surface, but we see she's trapped under ice. It's a gorgeous scene, and the screen splits in half with the Yautja trying to work out what's happening. He then demasks like in Predator 1 and Predator 2, but we don't get Ursa calling him one ugly motherfucker. No! We can see though that we're in a longboat graveyard here, and it makes for a really eerie setting. Beyond that, it's also an environment where a heavy predator can have their size used against them. It can crack through the ice, and we see as it also slides back upon using the Soundwave Gauntlet. As the series has mentioned, the Yautja tend to go to Earth during the hot seasons because it's a climate that's more like their home planet. So it's easily outsmarted, and Ursa uses a ship anchor to crack the ice and then eventually weigh it down. Also, when watching it for this video, I did wonder if Trachtenberg took inspiration from Alien vs Predator 1, as the alien queen was sent to the depths of the Antarctic just like the Yautja here. She also uses the concussive blast against him, which sends him flying backwards just like it did on the ice. We then see her walk to her son's body. She's lost everything on this quest for revenge, and he asks if he killed the monster. He then fades in her hand like a body in GoldenEye, and we see her in her current predicament. She's locked up in a Yautja prison vessel, and we then cut to our next hero. That is Kenji Kawakami, who's the hero of the second story, and we get a super cool Easter egg here. Both brothers are voiced by Luis Ozawa Shanshen, who voiced Hanzo in Predators. He was actually named after Hattori Hanzo, with Robert Rodriguez giving a nod to his collaborator and friend Quentin Tarantino. Because of the connections though, it is believed that these are his ancestors, which is an Easter egg I love. This isn't the first time that Yautja have fought in Japan either, and we had Predator Blood Feud, where an old Yautja went to fight a descendant of someone he fought in feudal Japan. We also had Aliens vs Predator Eternal, where a Yautja fought an opponent in a near future Japan. Then there was Predator Xenogenesis, where a Yautja fought against an immortal swordsman. As the story starts, we hear the line, "The leaves of a tree grow side by side, brother, yet when they fall alone." We then cut to a leaf falling, which is joined by a second before we focus back on the one. This represents the two brothers and how they'll be parted, come back together, and then we'll end with just one, which is also another theme of Predator in my eyes. In most of the movies except Predators, a group goes into a battle together only to end up with a last man standing situation. Or woman. Looking at you, Naru. The fight also goes down at the exact spot where we end the story, and it's fitting to have things begin here. Practicing with sticks, they're told it's time to grow up and are made to fight with real swords by their father. It's a duel for the armor and honor, with the latter being integral to feudal Japan. Not to mention the Japanese Meiji Restoration. This was actually an era that led to Japan fighting the USA in World War II, which added another layer to the final battle. Honor also fits in with the codex and general theme of the anthology, with this being something that all the characters possess. I did wonder if the fighters who were seen as honorable got to go on to be the killer of killers, whereas dishonorable killers ended up on something like the game planet, like what we had in Predators. Here we see as Kenji decides not to fight his brother, seeking peace instead. However, Kyoshi attacks after their father puts back the helmet because he's after inheriting the title. Later on Yautja Prime, Kenji puts his sword down, refusing to play by the rules of someone else. This is a key core to the character, but it is something that leads to him basically becoming an outcast. In this sparring match, Kenji's easily defeated and cut by his brother, and they no longer have a friendly relationship. Kyoshi then takes their father's side, so Kenji runs off. It also thematically fits in with Predator Badlands, as their deck was seen as the runt of his clan and his brother was ordered to kill him. However, he instead turned on the father, only for him to die himself. 20 years later, we see as the boy's father dies, and Kyoshi is now the ruler of this region of Japan. I also wondered if Trachtenberg had played Ghost of Tsushima, as that had a former samurai infiltrate a family member's castle that looks just like this one. I love how Kenji is also the predator of this story. He wears camouflage and hides in the shadows like the Yautja. We see he's become a shinobi, which is kind of at odds with the samurai philosophy of meeting one's enemy head-on equally. He's got all manner of tools at his disposal, including kunai, kusuragami, and ninjato. Whew, but it's just like the various weapons that the Yautja have in their arsenal, with the arming up scene being very similar. In the concept art, he also had a wrist blade and a circular blade, which was more in line with their technology. But yeah, it's a great flip on the usual stories we've had so far. However, he's not the only hunter here, as we also see the Yautja. At first, it seems like a statue, but it then moves and we see through the predator's thermal vision. Kenji then infiltrates the area by using a log in order to take out a god silently. It puts him on the Yautja's radar though, as the alien sees Kenji's body heat while carrying the god. My, how the turns are tabled. The stalker has now become the stalkee, as the Yautja watches Kenji climb up the wall and get closer to his brother. Kenji then sees Kyoshi, but he also notices the shimmer of the Yautja's camo. This reminded me a lot of Mike being dumbstruck by the City Hunter's camo in Predator 2, and the moment of hesitation causes a problem as the god basically spots him and is about to sound the alarm. However, Kenji swings into action and stops the god from hitting the bell. It's all for nothing though, as another sentry raises the alarm, so he goes on the attack. The smoke bombs look stunning here, and we watch from his POV as he strikes down the gods. Again, he is the Yautja here, and it's akin to the Penthouse slaughter in Predator 2. Also love how this has no dialogue, and Kenji touches the mark his father made in the past, which does feel a lot like Ursa's mark on her face. You get everything they're putting across though without them even saying a single word, and it works so well in the movie. Now the dialogue was deliberately toned down as much as possible, and Trachtenberg said he was inspired to make this choice by the movie Seven Samurai. The brothers then fight as they did as kids while being stalked by the Yautja. They're very clearly evenly matched, and Kenji pulls out the chain. The animation is really smooth here as well, especially when Kyoshi puts on their father's armor. It shows him pretty much stepping into the shoes of his dad and siding fully with the man that turned his back on his son, and he turned his back on his brother. But yeah, ultimately doing this is why he fails. Now we think it's a fight to the death, but see that it isn't. All Kenji wanted was to scar his brother's cheek in revenge in a sort of eye for an eye mentality, and a way to show that, yeah, I can come kill you anytime I want. The barrier then breaks and Kyoshi goes tumbling over the edge. Now I like to think it was his father's cut that made it weak, and it's then exacerbated when the weight from his dad's armor is put onto the beam. In the past, his father pushed them apart, and once again his father's actions split them up here. Kenji then pauses once again in reflection and looks at the image of his dad. However, he's then jump scared by the Yautja ripping down the mural. We then get a bloody massacre as this Yautja has a claw on a chain, which is similar to what his brother did. It's also just like Kratos' Blades of Chaos, which he carried throughout the original set of games. He also has a spear with a blade on it, which is similar to what the other Yautja have used, and it appears to be like a combi stick. We then see he has a plasma caster on his shoulder, which is of course a big franchise staple. Interestingly, he has two side by side, and I did wonder if it was a callback to Wolf having one on his shoulder in Alien vs Predator Requiem, which you can check out the breakdown of that on the channel now. It was the best day of my life. But yeah, this is the bloody and brutal Predator we've always wanted. Kenji almost escapes, but the Yautja literally has something up his sleeve. It's a wrist launch bomb, and the way it pops out of the gauntlet and glows reminds me a lot of the levitating explosives in Prey. The Yautja then gives himself away despite being cloaked, and Kenji stabs him in the foot, which is a bit of a rookie error. The pair then race across the rooftops, and Kenji hits the pursuer with a kunai, damaging the wrist gauntlet. We then get this story's quote-unquote waterfall moment as they fall into the river. Kenji even crawls under the riverbed just like Dutch. Kyoshi then appears still alive, and though they fight, he pushes Kenji away to save him. He's then skewered in the process. This moment is very similar to Prey, and the siblings Naru and Tabe are confronted by the feral predator at the Voyagers camp. Both Tabe and Kyoshi are stabbed by the wrist blades, and both also fall in the fight against the Yautja. The claw chain is also shown to be insanely sharp, with it cutting easily through a tree. Cutting through trees is just like a staple of Japanese anime, and it also reminds me of the net used in AVP 1. We then see as it gets used against him when Kenji baits him and sticks bombs in the claw, which is similar how Torres uses the chain to his advantage in the bullet. And we think the Predator is dead as he slams into the wall, but really he's just cloaked. The brothers then think it's safe to duel, but a leaf lands on the Predator. This all ties back to that opening moment, and I also love how there's like no break in their feud. Like no moment where they're even like, what the fuck was that? It's just like, alright, that's done, let's get back to the fight. Japanese legends are of course filled with dragons, and I did wonder if the design of the creature here was meant to mimic how they appear there. Because yeah, just in the same way, you know, we've heard predators described as being devils and demons, and even Grendel, you can see how certain legends would be interpreted in certain ways by things that people encountered. But either way, it's a badass moment as the brothers slice the predator's head off and their torso in two. It's also just like their future descendant Hanzo, who dies after defeating the falconer Predator and Predators. The explosion of blood also really reminds me of Japanese cinema. This is something that originated from a malfunction in the movie Sanjuro, and it ended up becoming a trope in their art. Trachtenberg also mentioned how he was inspired by stuff like Samurai Jack. That's something that famously has no dialogue, which is also something the creator used in Primal, which was also an inspiration for Badlands. Kyoshi then recites the words we heard at the start of the story. However, Kyoshi says his brother is not alone. It's the only words spoken in the entire tale, which is just like Hanzo and Predator. There, the character actually only had 2 lines in the entire movie, and that was down to his backstory. In that film, he had missing fingers on his left hand as part of a Yakuza punishment, as according to him, he talked too much, so was likely punished for snitching. But yeah, they finally ended up working together at the site of one of their greatest memories, only for one of them to perish. In the end, Kenji finally got revenge, just like Ursa, but
what did it cost?
Everything.
Now it seems like the family constantly find themselves targets of the Yautja, as we know in the expanded lore that Hanzo's brother was also taken by one of the creatures. That was the story that went down in Aliens vs Predator Ultimate Prey, and yeah, it seems like this family just cannot catch a break. But yeah, since they're descended from like the leaders of a feudal Japanese warlord or something, yeah, makes sense the predators would constantly be like, fucking get the kid in. We're Nepo baby hunting. We then transition from Japan back to the cell that our 3 predator killers are kept in. I really like how it transitions from Ursa to Kenji to Torres, and it's almost like you're picking a character in a video game. Torres is totally unlike the other 2 though, and in general, you know, predator killers are seen as stoic badasses, but it's actually fun to see a young hip warrior. He's voiced by Rick Gonzalez, who was fantastic as Wild Dog in the Arrowverse, and yeah, he's just a great character in this that we as the audience are supposed to relate to. But yeah, he's from the 40s, so I'm not sure how they're bloody old fogey, but yeah, we cut to the 40s, and finally get a Predator movie set in World War II. Keyes mentioned that the US government have been aware of the alien race for a long time, and the Yautja were known to be active during the Battle of Iwo Jima. They were also spotted during the Battle of the Bulge, and Greyback from Predator 2 also may have hunted during World War II. Paying close attention to him, he actually had a US 2nd Infantry Division badge on his arm, so yeah, fans have kind of filled in the backstory. And beyond that, the Yautja even took out Nazis in Predator Demons Gold. But this story isn't one of American GIs fighting a predator in the jungle, or even a frozen battlefield. Instead, it's a fighter pilot story that finally shows the Yautja ships in a dogfight. You see as Torres remembers his life pre-war, and here In the Mood by Glenn Miller. Interestingly, Miller enlisted in the US Air Force during World War II, and the connection gets even stronger as the musician actually went missing during the war. He was in England playing at military bases and for the BBC, but he wanted to fly to France following its liberation. At the time though, the flights were cancelled down to the bad weather, and thus he sought a non-passenger plane to take him to the country. However, this flight never landed, and to this date, his fate's a total mystery. And I'm not saying it was predators, but now obviously, you know, if flights are getting cancelled for bad weather, it's probably the bad weather. Or predators. But yeah, Torres is a total daredevil, driving what looks like a Cadillac 353. Inspired by the crop duster flying over him, he decides to drive dangerously. Reminds me a lot of the kids driving wildly in the opening of Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull, or Independence Day when Russell's son was chasing him. But yeah, that might be a reach, but Indiana Jones and the ending of Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know, that obviously inspired the ending warehouse scene. Warehouse was also the working title for the movie, and it was very clear that they were focused on building towards that. The bullet also drew inspiration from the movie Dunkirk, as Trachtenberg tried to make the flying sections look as though they had fast velocity. Apparently this is really hard to pull off in film, but I have to say, do a fantastic job. We then see as the plane careens by and learn that it's Torres' dream to fly, but unfortunately his car breaks down and it takes Torres further away from his dream. His father then teases him, asking if he thinks he's Charles Lindbergh, who's of course a legendary pilot. His dad talks about how you have to become one with the engine, and this technique works later on when his life's on the line. The third story also highlights the thing that connects them all. That is, the heroes and their fathers. Ursa lost her father, and her quest for revenge became ruinous, and Kenji and Kayoshi's father tore the brothers apart. But Mr. Torres is a good father, as we can see, and in being such a good guy, he helps John survive. His father is clearly giving him very specific words of wisdom, as he knows he's been drafted and then drops this bombshell on Torres. Though he's excited, there's also the sense of him being anxious about what lies ahead. We then see that the story is called The Bullet, and that's the name of his plane, and the star is of course a symbol of the US Air Force. The Bullet also links the titles of the stories together, as each one of them is named after the hero's weapon. So shield for Ursa, sword for Kenji, and bullet the plane for Torres. Now as we see, he's been drafted as a pilot, but he's currently grounded due to his plane malfunctioning. However, using the skills he learned back home, he's attempted to fix it up. We then meet his mentor Vandy, who's voiced by Michael Biehn. He was of course in Aliens, and joins Bill Paxton and Lance Henriksen in acting in an Alien, a Predator, and also a Terminator movie. Torres then gets in his plane, but he's unable to get it up and running. Vandy then channels John's father as he tries to instill in Torres that you need to know how to fix your plane to fly it, and kind of becoming one with the plane. Now Vandy actually went through a lot of different iterations, and the final version is the father figure that we see here. But at first he was a friend of Torres, but they then changed him to being a bully. That was thought to be a bit adversarial though, and they wanted a relationship that was different to the previous 2 protagonist partners. Thus, we ended up with what we see here. The pep talk is short-lived though, as his fellow flyboys return and reveal they've been attacked by an unknown entity, or a UFO. We've just been doing a big breakdown of the X-Files profiles, and during the time, there was lots of reports about pilots seeing strange ships in the sky. So yeah, it is kind of playing into that, and we see as an injured soldier says he's never seen anything like it. We then learn that the pilot's engines were attacked first. The Yautja tech allows the pilot predator to home in on them, as this is of course a major heat source. Upon examining the plane, Torres then realizes that the situation isn't as it seems. He finds a piece of predator technology which only reacts upon being heated up. During this, Torres also says,
"What are you?"
which is similar to what Dutch said to the jungle hunter.
What the hell are you?
Who are you?
We then cut to Vandy and co fighting against enemy forces from Vichy, France. In case you don't know, this was a French collaborationist regime that ruled the south of France after Germany invaded the country. Marshal Philippe Pétain signed an armistice and formed a brutal regime fought with racism, anti-Semitism and also homophobia. Vichy's influence then spread to North Africa, where we see Torres flying through later. Torres tries to sound the alarm that there's an enemy up there that's not on either side though, however the Texas Aces are out of range. The only way now is to get his plane working and fly out himself. He then becomes one with the plane like his father did with his car and manages to get airborne. The story then follows the beats of the others and the Texas Aces are wiped out by the Predator. The Aces have successfully taken down the enemy though, and the Predator emerges after seeing they're the strongest side. The species of course wait until they have a worthy opponent, just like kind of when they saw Dutch kill that camp in the first film, and this is when it chooses to make its move. It's another great scene though, and a completely different style of hunting than what we've seen before. We'd usually expect to see like a Yautja drop from a pod or jumping out the back by now given the ship, but I love how Trachtenberg manages to weave both fan service and a bucking of expectations together. Having a dogfight in a Predator movie doesn't sound like it should work, but it really does. Torres also figures out the rules, so to speak. Don't engage or appear as a threat and you'll be left alone, it's all good. Falls on deaf ears though as the ship appears and starts to clean house. We see the craft from behind as it decloaks, which is a similar shot to the one that Trachtenberg used in Prey. Rather than being the drop and deploy ones that we've seen before this though, the ship seems designed solely for fights like this as it has two large jets on the back, which appear like rockets. The conflict in general was heavily built around the development of rockets, and Germany was far ahead of the Allies in that regard. The V1 rockets were capable of hitting London, and we also had the looming threat of the V2. So seeing this rocket would scare the crap out of the pilots, and it represents the advanced technology of the time. The ship also doesn't use plasma or energy weapons, but opts for kinetic weapons instead. Kind of seems like an intimidating pirate ship, and even uses grapple hooks on chains to hook onto other ships to be boarded. The pirate-esque aesthetic also translates to the cyborg's Yautja look as well. He has an eye patch and various metal plates grafted to his body, just like your stereotypical pirate. Why do the Yautja look like pirates? They just are.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
That doesn't work, but moving on. The ship also looks similar to Deck's mother's ship at the end of Predator Badlands. So hey, maybe I was reaching with the rocket thing, but that's how it comes across. We then see through the cyborg Predator's POV as he targets Tex 3. The movie once more messes again with our expectations as a ship-mounted shoulder cannon comes into view. Instead of a plasma explosion like the one that hit Blaine though, we get a massive grapple hook that looks like the one the samurai hunter used. However, it does feel like it might be a reference to Blaine as it hits the pilot through the chest like the plasma caster did to your old boy Jesse Ventura. It's very brutal, but quite a low-tech death in the franchise that's known for its advanced technology. However, it shows how dangerous that the Predators are, and they don't need incredibly advanced weapons. And yeah, seeing the cyborg Yautja melt a pilot alive using his jets is a big kill that we probably can't show because of YouTube censorship. Torres has to constantly fix his plane while flying as well, as his wing then catches fire, and it shows the tenacity and ingenuity that it takes to be a Predator killer. The cyborg is nearly bested, but it launches a net cannon that slices and dices a plane. It's a mega version of the one used by the City Hunter and Yautja in Predator 2 and AVP-1. The pilot's body parts then fly past Torres, which is just harrowing as he tries to stop his plane from exploding. He then says, "Get off my plane!" Which I'm sure has to be a reference to Air Force One.
Get off my plane.
Torres then gets another clue on how to defeat this Predator. The falling plane is hotter than his plane's engines, and as such, the Yautja's weapons target that instead. Vandy then says no one's coming to bail him out, which is a sentiment that his father expressed when he was drafted. Torres works out though that they need to climb high to cool their engines and then cut them so they can't be targeted. His mentor though sacrifices himself so that Torres can get away. It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Vandy is killed by what looks like the Yautja shuriken from AVP 1 and 2, but it has extremely hot ropes instead of blades. Sadly, Vandy's plan doesn't work as the ship shrugs off the explosion, but hey, at least Torres is invisible to the Yautja for now. He manages to get one over on the alien as he shoots out one of the engines using just the inertia of falling. But unfortunately for him, he's heading towards the ground and will have to turn his engines on. He swoops through a city to get away, and this reminded me a lot of Indiana Jones in the Great Circle, where you fly a plane through Shanghai. This is a great sequence though, and again, it showcases the virtues of making this movie animated rather than live action. Torres then leads the alien into the middle of a naval battle, and the flak wrecks the spaceship. However, it manages to come back from a direct hit from a ship's gun. I just love the shot of it flying underwater though, and it's almost akin to something like Jaws. It also reminded me a lot of that AJ Styles Undertaker meme. He then takes inspiration from his father to flood the engines, as it's not him that the Predator targets, but rather the plane itself. We then get another callback when he says,
Come on, you son of a bitch, shoot me down!
Which is just like Dutch saying,
Come on, come on. Kill me, I'm here, kill me!
Both Torres and Dutch did this while trying to lure their hunters into a trap, with Torres using the parachute to send his plane into the spaceship. It's also similar to Naru, who also used the Yautja tech to her advantage. The engine then slams into the spaceship, causing a massive explosion. As another bit of a reach, I'd say that this also reminds me of Dutch running from the nukes at the end of Predator 1. Torres survives in the end though, and it's at this point that he's then taken to the killer of killers. Now unlike the others, we actually see him return home rather than transitioning to the ship. It's a full circle moment though, as he's now fixing cars just like he was attempting to at the start. We then get a very stereotypical alien abduction scene, which must be inspired by the perceived UFO sightings at the time, such as the Roswell incident. There's even a crop circle, which of course goes hand in hand with the UFO theories. This is a brand new Yautja ship though, and it looks very different than the ones that we've seen so far. Most have looked like the scout ship from the very first movie, or at least some variation of it. We know it's a collector ship though, and it's a lot like a military cargo plane. It's built for logistics and not designed to look sleek like a fighter jet. But yeah, it all kind of fits in with a period of like alien abductions, and I do hope that we get like another anthology that features the OWLF or maybe even Project Stargazer. Look, I know the Predator was absolutely shit, but the movie had an alternate ending in which a turncoat Yautja worked with the humans. And yeah, it would just be good to see something like that. We do break it all down in our video on that film, which kill me still. But yeah, just give me like a Mulder and Scully type-esque story investigating these disappearances. Especially as we see Mike and Dutch later on. But yeah, we then see as Torres is taken out of cryostasis, and we have no idea how long it's been since he was abducted. Put through a long corridor, this looks a lot like the one from the Death Star, and it just fits in with the whole prison and space thing. At the moment though, he is on Yautja Prime, which was a location in AVP2 and also Predator Badlands. Torres also has an explosive neck device strapped to him, and he meets his fellow humans. Naturally, they don't take to him at first, with Ursa spitting in his hand and calling him a butt baby. Torres then embarrasses himself in front of Kenji. I did wonder if this would be a bigger deal, as the US and Japan were bitter enemies in World War II, but it did kind of explain how Torres knows a little Japanese. I think they definitely could have tied it into the Pacific Theater though, but it is kind of glossed over. He then sits down, and we get them in the positions they were at when we were introduced to the characters. Torres then thinks about how he'd get out the brig on a Ranger, which was a ship he was stationed at during World War II, which is in fact also a real ship. Now the trio may have survived a fight against the Yautja, but the nightmare is really just beginning, as it's revealed that they're now in a Gladiator arena. Kind of reminds me of when I worked in a call centre and we get given really tough projects, and the crap people there, they wouldn't be given shit, mate. But we get given the tough ones, and then as a reward for surviving that, we'd get given even tougher assignments. And I wish I was shit, mate. But yeah, this whole thing is a very deep callback to an unmade Predator movie. In case you don't know, kids, Robert Rodriguez was hired to write the script for Predator 3 back in 1994, which was the year before he made Desperado. While it wasn't made, it was then morphed into 2010's Predator, but the original concept was a lot like this. However, yeah, the budget would have been insane, so things stalled out. It was only years later when they found the script and were like, oh, wait, why don't we just make this, mate? The original outline though would have featured the return of Dutch, who at the start was abducted by a group of soldiers in Predator gear. He was then taken to Arcus 6, which was a world similar to the game preserved planet. We learn that various aliens and humans are made to fight to the death to train teenage Yautja, and the Predator King ruled over this planet. We then close out the movie with Dutch killing him, and yeah, the similarities are very, very obvious here. But yeah, the King's ship is a great blend of advanced tech that also stays true to the Yautja's trophy hunting nature. It's like a practical trophy wall like in Predator 2 or Badlands, and on the side are spikes while the top has what looks like a big face hugger skeleton. The alien connection doesn't end there either, as the Grendel King is what looks like a cape made out of xenomorph tails. He even has the rib cage of a xenomorph on his back, and it was theorized that this might have even been a queen. The subtitles are great here though, as they're all different fonts that represent the different time periods and subtitle styles of our hero. We also see that the colours translate the language, and it's just a nice way of explaining why they understand what's happening. They've all killed predators, been successful at work, and made things worse for themselves, and thus the one who survives this fight will then fight against the king. If they win that, which is highly unlikely, they'll then be crowned the killer of killers.
He said it! He said it!
So it's like a 3-round job interview. Before that though, the neck device on the Yautja is triggered, and we see as a jungle hunter's head explodes. From Predators, we know this clan often gets bitched on, as we had the one strung up there as well. It's a shame, because like, these were my boys at one point, but yeah, nowadays they're just pulled out to be messed about and shown how shit they are. Most of the time, things like this are done to dishonorable predators though, and I'd love to learn more about the hierarchy and how the franchise's many clans interact on Yautja Prime. Each of them is then given a weapon from their tribe, with Ursa getting a massive battle axe, as she says praise Sif. Sif in Norse mythology is the wife of Thor, and yep, I learned most of what I know about her from the Marvel movies, because when they were like, it's not going to be the wife of Thor, I was like, whoa, what? Is that what it is? And they were like, yeah, that's what it is normally. I'm like, whoa, I better store this away for a rainy day when I become a YouTuber and need to use this in a video. Kenji is then given a sword, which is another great Easter egg. In Predators, Hanzo finds the sword in Nolan's secret hideout, and the sword here looks almost identical to the one that Hanzo uses to kill the Falconer Predator. Due to the cryostasis, it's even possible that this is his descendant's weapon. We then get the return of the Raphael Adolini pistol. This first appeared in Predator 2 when Greyback handed the weapon over to Mike. It said Raphael Adolini 1715, and the backstory of this pistol was expanded upon in Predator 1718. There, Adolini's crew turned on him after he wanted to return the gold that his crew had looted from a church. Greyback then turned up and teamed up with the captain, and they were about to fight only for someone to shoot the captain in the back. Before dying, Adolini handed his pistol to the Predator, who then handed it to Mike. The pistol then returned in Prey, and the comic backstory was retconned to Raphael being a translator instead of a pirate captain. Feels like passing the parcel a bit, or passing the pistol, but them abducting Naru explains how they got it back here. It's funny as well, because like the weapon's so old and Torres has no idea how to use it. Each of the three must now fight to the death for a chance to kill the Grendel King, and we see that Kenji tries to communicate that they need to work together, but the language barrier just gets in the way. I did find it funny as well that the Yautja devices can clearly translate like Japanese and Nordic. Is that right?
Yes, it's true. This man has no dick.
But they don't allow them to speak to each other through the translator. It basically just translates the Yautja language into their languages, but doesn't allow them to do the same thing. So yeah, it's just a clever way of basically getting them to fight each other. Ursa then drops the name Grendel King, and in the deleted scenes, Ursa actually told the story of Grendel at the campfire. There were also 2 more deleted scenes in Ursa's story, such as the crew singing a sea shanty, which I would have liked to see. I love a bloody good sea shanty. And also people being strung up like in Predator 1 and 2, which would foreshadow the Predator's reveal. Torres manages to work out some what Kenji's saying though, but he thinks he means they need to fight Ursa. The axe versus sword battle looks great though, as Torres tries to work out how to load the pistol. Things then go from bad to worst when a giant beast with a missing tusk's let out, which shows it's survived some tough battles. Health and safety clearly doesn't exist in the Predator Coliseum either, as it eats its own handler. Ursa then starts to realize that Torres is like her son before he gets swallowed by the beast. Luckily though, there is the handler's wrist device that Torres struggles to use, while the other two fight it from the outside using a shield and sword. By teaming up, they manage to defeat the monster, but poor old Torres is sent down into the bin. And yeah, just seeing him still inside the stomach, you wonder like, if he'd not got out, would he just staying there until he starved to death or was melted by stomach acid. I don't know, mate, but it's bad. Ursa then goes back to her default of fighting, as dying in battle is the only way she believes that she'll be with Anders again. I love how the Predators also have their own bulldozer as well, which is a bike with an energy shield. Naturally, it looks just like the one that Deck uses in Badlands. Kenji decides not to play by the enemy's rules any longer, and he basically gives up, which annoys Ursa because she needs to die in glorious battle. I also love how the skull that the king's perched on top of has a red trail of blood. It's a lot like Ursa's face markings before, and just nicely builds off some of the things done so far. Just as they're about to die, Torres appears, having stolen a hoverbike, which he somehow managed to figure out how to use as well. Well done, mate. Next, he figures out how to work the ship too, which is a bit suspicious, but you've just got to go with it. He is one with the bike and ship. But yeah, it leads to the three of them fighting against the Grendel King. Because of his size, they all need to team up, and Kenji and Ursa have their weapons while Torres tries to get them out of it. The king then goes primal after seeing his blood and gets ready to kill Ursa and Kenji. This is when Torres manages to launch him back using the ship's engines. Once again, he focuses and becomes one with the ship, but just as they're about to leave, the king slices off Kenji's arm. This is something that happened to poor old Dylan in Predator 1 just before he died, and arms being chopped off in general is a trope that's been a major part of the franchise. Like Mike chopped off the city hunter's arm in Predator 2, and I'm sure we've mentioned like every breakdown ad nauseum how many times the arms get chopped off, so I'll just skip it for now. It's not over yet though, as the ship gets hit by a grappling hook, which is something that Torres and Kenji experienced. Ursa then uses it to her advantage, like the anchor in her story, and Kenji and Torres fly off together. Kenji then calls Torres brother, having made a new family with the survivors, which is like a staple of every movie these days, but these guys literally knew each other for 5 minutes and spoke like once. But yeah, it's your brother, he's replaced your brother. Amazing. The king then says, let's go hunting, as lots of ships fly off in pursuit. You might also notice that the bikes race along the surface as well, similar to what Deck had in Badlands. Robert Rodriguez's original script also teased that Earth could be invaded by a fleet of Yautja, marking a further similarity between Killer of Killers and the unproduced project. Now in the end, we learn that Ursa survived and watch as she's put back into stasis. We then get the first of our surprise cameos. Building off the credit scene of Prey, we see that Naru's being captured. The scene there showed Yautja ships arrived on Earth, and clearly they collected the character. As mentioned, this was originally the final shot of this film, but at San Diego Comic-Con, Trachtenberg treated fans to an extended ending that also included Dutch and Mike. At the time, we had just locked our Predator 2 video, where I went over Mike's story after the film, and I was like, oh, I wonder if he's been taken along with Naru, and maybe Dutch is there, and they could do like a big Avengers team up. And then they revealed that, and all the comments were like, you fucking dickhead, mate, you stole that from the movie. And I was like, mate, we'll write these months in advance, and Predator 2's been out since like the 90s. I've thought it for a while. But yeah, beyond that, nearly every Predator movie almost has had a return of Dutch, and finally it seems like the badass himself's returned. The novelization of Predator 2 though explained how Peter Keyes interviewed Dutch about his experience in the jungle, and Dutch then escaped, which led to his brother John searching for him. The soldier then became like a mythological legend, and he popped up in some of the most dangerous battlefields in the world. He appeared in LA after the events of Predator 2 and ended up working with Adam Garber from the OWLF. Later on, he had experimental Yautja DNA injected into him after a Yautja hunt left him at death's door. At some point though, he was captured and sent to this warehouse. Regarding Mike, he retired from the police in 2022 and began working as a gang war consultant for various police forces. At a convention in Rio de Janeiro, he realized that a Yautja was hunting gang members once more. He then managed to apprehend a rogue Yautja, who was then taken away by others of his kind. So he was also taken at one point, and I think Trachtenberg might utilize some of this stuff moving forward for the expanded universe. However, as it's across multiple books, I wouldn't mind him coming up with his own lore moving forward. But yeah, we'll have to see, and that's it for the video, and I have to say, I just love this movie. It feels like a love letter to the franchise, and I just hope it builds towards more. Having an animated anthology series of movies while also having more live action films is the dream, and one day maybe Disney will unvault the AVP anime series Aliens vs Predator Annihilation. But we have to pray for that, pun not intended there. But yeah, I'd love to hear all your thoughts on this film. Please drop a like on the video if you liked it, and if you loved it, make sure you hit the subscribe. If you want to follow us on Instagram as well and keep it up to date with what we're doing, then make sure that you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos, and if you click the join button, you get at least one big breakdown a week before anyone else. Videos like this are released early for our members. It's just 99 cents a month, so less than $12 a year, and it just goes all towards helping these videos get made and really means a lot to us. So yeah, I appreciate everyone who does it. If not though, thank you for sticking through this video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.